Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, May 21st, 2025, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we do get started, guys, let you know that we do pride ourselves on being a news podcast. What does that mean? That means we only cite from reputable sources with award-winning journalism. We don't do fake news or sensational news like Fox News, Newsmax, News Media, The Blaze, The Daily Beast, wherever extreme left or extreme right you get your views from. We simply do not do that. At the same time, we do try to maintain our professionalism, but let's be honest, words do fly. At the same time, guys, there may be things that might be shown that might be too graphic for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised aside from that welcome. So how do we start this wonderful title off? We just negotiated with terrorists and paid them for it. Well, we'll get to that. But first, let's get to Ice Barbie having her moment in the sun where all she simply had to do, ladies and gentlemen, was simply answer a question. And what was that question, you might ask? Well, it was a question that pretty much anybody, the director of Homeland Security, should know about habeas corpus, and yet she failed miserably.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right
let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea.
Yeah, pretty much. It is amazing to me how Ice Barbie, Kristi Noem, does not know that. Habeas corpus is literally, as the Senator Maggie Hassan has said, basically what separates us from police states. You would think for a woman who's basically a lapdog, who's following F-47's instructions about just rounding up immigrants, whether they're illegal or not, deporting them because he made a promise, now all of a sudden can't say, oh, well, I can't explain or I can't define what habeas corpus is, except that it must deal with the president. This is why education is vital, especially for somebody who's been empowered to do something that really just shouldn't happen to begin with. But you are the director of Homeland Security, ergo also in control of ICE, and can't even answer a single constitutional question, which goes to show you that if we move forward with people in certain areas of Congress, especially in areas of power, there might need to be some requirements like education, comprehension, and would you stop kissing the president's ass? Just throwing that out there. But speaking of people trying to get that was a terrible segue. But speaking of people trying to get other countries to kiss the president's ass, for some odd reason, South Africa, the delegation from South Africa decided to visit F-47, and well, let's just say exactly what the meeting was about. Yes, about them South Africans that were supposedly being persecuted because they're white farmers in a nearly predominant black country are now being asked to speak with F-47, and it went about as well as you could expect.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced that it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about this for? You to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? and it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing. They also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. If the news wasn't fake like NBC, which is fake news, totally one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible. But if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. They don't want to talk about it, but now they have to talk about it. But they won't. This won't even be a subject. They'll have him talking about why did a country give a free, think of this. Why did a country give an airplane to the United States Air Force? Okay, the United States, not to me, to the United States Air Force, so they can help us out, because we need an Air Force One until that's Air Force One. It's being built, 2 of them being built. But Boeing's a little bit late, unfortunately. So why did they give us a plane to the United States Air Force? That's what that idiot talks about after viewing a thing where thousands of people are dead.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I take it. I would take it. If your country offers.
So what's crazy about this is that, of course, that was during where one of the reporters from NBC did ask, why are you accepting a jet? Only because the Pentagon has said that they will accept the Boeing jet from Qatar. Because, and I stress this very heavily, there is a reason why F-47 cannot receive gifts, because, again, no president has ever received gifts of that extraordinary amount, because that would assume that you're basically compromised. Now, anybody that's been following Trump before he became F-47 knew he was compromised. Trump Tower is a prime example of that, because most Saudi Arabian families, including those overseas who are vastly rich, have bought apartments there. Again, at the same time, we just talked about the Gaza Strip, where, again, with the war between Israel and Palestine, where Israel decided to bomb more of Gaza, keep in mind, F-47 has joked about putting a Trump hotel resort on Gaza. So again, the reason that he did not accept that plane is because A, no president has ever accepted a gift of that exorbitant amount, and 2, if he did, he's compromised, which means that he will lean more toward them when it comes to foreign policy. We've already seen it as he's lifted the sanctions on Syria. He's also told Iraq that, hey, you guys, as long as, you behave, you can run your nuclear program. This goes after 2 Democratic presidents have put sanctions on Syria, have heavily monitored Iraq for its nuclear program, and now F-47 is saying, you guys are all right. Do you see the problem with a compromised president? At the same time, he's sitting there saying, well, it'll only be used to take F-47 everywhere. He has Air Force One. But again, he's F-47. Oh, it's not about as big. Their planes are bigger, more faster, they're more intricate. You ever notice that maybe the size thing with F-47 is because he's possibly, trying to compensate for something? Because again, everything is huge or big or massive or things of that nature. But here's the thing about Air Force One. Yes, it's our plane. Is it a Boeing plane? Yes. Boeing needs the help, especially the fact that, let's not forget, just 3 months ago, Boeing planes couldn't stay in the sky at all. At the same time, Boeing was having issues because their security measures were being called out for the fact that they were cutting corners, rushing planes through. And what has F-47 did for them? F-47 has secured a $96 billion contract with Qatar. $96 billion. Boeing's largest contract in recent events. And they just got a $96 billion lifeline. Why? Because, again, F-47 only looks out for his billionaire buddies and corporations. And even more so, going back to South Africa and why they're here, why the South African president, along with his delegation, are here. Keep in mind, what F-47 and his ass kisser J.D. Vance tried to do was paint this picture of these South African refugees who are white that were basically treated like black folks. Oh, well, they've been ridiculed. They've been institutionalized. They've had their land taken away from them. They had their lives threatened. And that's why we stepped in as the good old US of A and gave them asylum. So I'm just going to point one thing out in this next clip, because, again, this is where real reporting shines, because he's going to ask them one question. Because outside of the folks who are currently at our southern border, who are also seeking asylum, what makes these people different outside of the fact that they are white?
You are watching live coverage in the Oval Office. President Trump meeting with the president of South Africa, seated beside him here, Cyril Ramaphosa. I want to bring in our senior Washington correspondent, Hallie Jackson, who's been watching along with us. Hallie, another extraordinary meeting inside the Oval Office, talking about a difficult topic, accusations that the White House, this administration, has made about genocide of white South African farmers. That's right. An accusation that obviously President Ramaphosa is pushing back against in this meeting today.
Yeah, it's not quite a Zelensky level blow up when, of course, President of Ukraine came in and there was that extraordinary moment in the Oval Office. But I'll tell you what, it is certainly an unexpected confrontation here. And the South African delegation seemed taken aback, candidly, Aaron, just by the reaction in the room. We'll get more from inside the room. I'm sure you heard the voice of our colleague there acting as pool. But you heard some sort of awkward laughter and then silence, frankly, when President Trump and the Trump team there played this video. Again, the president has accused in recent months South Africa of genocide. And you have heard the South African president pushing back very strongly on this, pointing to his agriculture minister who is speaking there, pointing to a number of reasons why he says that is simply not true. And yet this confrontation here persists. You get the impression that perhaps President Trump wanted this to happen as it is playing out, wanted these potentially clearly uncomfortable moments here. There is a backdrop to this, of course, in that President Trump's close confidant has been for months now Elon Musk, who's from South Africa, who's also been outspoken and vocal on this. And it comes as the Trump administration has also, even as they have essentially shut down the U.S. to most refugees around the nation, have opened U.S. borders to white South Africans to come into the country here. So it is complicated geopolitically, but in the room, just some of these really stunning moments here between these two world leaders. What's interesting here, too, the schedule was a little bit different than we expected. So you have to wonder, how does this play out? Do they end up having the rest of their meetings as is expected throughout the course of the afternoon? Or does this short circuit here, Aaron, and what we're watching play out live right here?
And the president of South Africa has made the effort a couple of times through the course of this meeting, Hallie, to try to say, you know what, we want to have this conversation. We want to hear your concerns and talk about what they believe, the South African government believes is the reality on the ground here, trying to sort of wrap this up. And yet we saw the president continue to reiterate his points here. And he was asked by several of the reporters in the room whether there was something that he wanted to see South Africa's government do at this moment, and he didn't really answer that question.
And you've heard the South African president and the leadership from South Africa there try to say, listen, to your point on the diplomacy that they seem to be trying to put forward here in the room, Aaron, say, hey, like, let's talk about this. We want to have this conversation and keep those discussions going. But the president is continuing to push on that. He is taking some questions, obviously, from in the room, but clearly displeased with questions that do not relate to the topic that he wants to get into here, which are these accusations of genocide. It's also interesting, Aaron, listen, you've been in these Oval Office sprays, as they're called in White House parlance. I've been in them. You don't often hear from the folks on the couch, especially not behind the couch as well. Some of the members of these foreign delegations that come. It is typically, of course, the principal, the leader who is in that chair opposite the president who speaks. So there's just a lot of very interesting moments here. And we've seen, of course, the U.S. delegation, including Vice President Vance. You can't see it in this shot, but on the other side as well, on the couch. So this is not it is fair and safe to say this is not typical. This is not how typically these things normally go down. But this is a president who obviously is comfortable with the unprecedented and is looking to make a point here.
So what's crazy about this is, again, that also there was a lot of talking, so I apologize. So in a sense, what they're basically trying to do is, again, explaining a whole lot of things. But the question still comes up, and I forgot, and I apologize. This is editing on my part because we're editing this as we're going. They did eventually get to the question of whether, what's the difference to F-47? And I believe this next clip may actually have it.
Mr. President, you welcome white Afrikaner refugees here. Can you explain to Americans why it's appropriate to welcome white Afrikaners here when other refugees like Afghans, Venezuelans, Haitians have all had their protected status revoked?
Well, this is a group, NBC, that is truly fake news. They ask a lot of questions in a very pointed way. They're not questions, they're statements. We've had tremendous complaints about Africa, about other countries too, from people. They say there's a lot of bad things going on in Africa, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. When you say we don't take others, all you have to do is take a look at the southern border. We let 21 million people come through our border, totally unchecked, totally unvetted. They came from all over the world. In many cases, they're criminals. They come from prisons. They come from mental institutions. They come from street gangs. They're drug dealers. So don't say that we didn't take them. We're trying to get them out as fast as we can. And we're doing record business on that. And we just won a big case where we're allowed to send back hundreds of criminals to Venezuela. Just won that today in the Supreme Court. I'm happy to hear. But we do have a lot of people are very concerned with regard to South Africa, and that's really the purpose of the meeting. And we'll see how that turns out. But we have many people that feel they're being persecuted, and they're coming to the United States. So we take from many locations if we feel there's persecution or genocide going on. And we had a lot of people. I must tell you, Mr. President, we have had a tremendous number of people, especially since they've seen this. Generally, they're white farmers, and they're fleeing South Africa, and it's a very sad thing to see. But I hope we can have an explanation of that, because I know you don't want that. It's a kind of a different meeting. Normally we have meetings, we talk about trade, and we'll be talking about trade and other things. But that certainly will be.
So here's how you say nothing and still try to think that you're saying something at the same time. He said nothing. He sat there and said, well, when the reporter asked him, and of course, it's NBC News, it's fake news, that you'll understand that. Did anybody just notice that he just tried to mansplain to the South African president about NBC News? Like he didn't know who NBC News was? He just tried to mansplain. And I'll give the South African president credit, Mr. Ramaphosa. I will give him credit, because that man kept a straight face, as he literally did was like, well, Fox, NBC News, they're fake news. I want him to sit there and go, we have TV in South Africa. Just so you know, we know what NBC News is. Thank you. You who has never seen a tanning bed you didn't like. But he said nothing. He sat there and said, well, and he of course never can answer questions or got to redirect. Well, the people at the border, they're criminals. They're all this. Even now, the Supreme Court ruled in my favor that we can continue what we're doing with deporting Venezuelans, that we deport all the criminals. He is talking about the protections that were removed for 350,000 Venezuelans that basically had protection status here in the U.S. under President Biden. Because he has this promise of getting rid of all illegal immigrants, as he claims, he's going after everybody, except white folks. So even now, the Supreme Court, which again, I go back to say that, I sit there and say this all the time, guys, the dangers of a conservative-leaning Supreme Court, I have always sat there and said this, that I've actually granted the administration, also had blocked F-47 administration from using the Aliens Act, but are sitting there saying, it's okay to remove the protection status for 350,000 Venezuelans in case you want to send them back. And of course, F-47's on his campaign. We're getting rid of all the criminals. They're going back to where they came from. 350,000 people seeking asylum from a war-torn country, from a warring, violence-riven country. They are not criminals. All 350,000 of them? If that's the case, then why in the 60-plus South Africans did you bring them here? Why are they not criminals? Why are they not the worst of the worst? Oh, because you listen to your ketamine-fueled friend Elon Musk, who, by the way, is disconnected from reality. While you have the South African president right there looking confused as he tried to show him, well, this is what we know. And he's sitting there in his delegation like, that's not true. These people are not being discriminated against. These farmers are not having land taken away from them. They're not any of the sort. But at the same time, this is the lie that he wants to spin. And this is the lie. Well, we're going to talk trade, things of that nature. No, if I was a South African president, I would have left. Because what's the point in talking to you? You basically want to put me out. You want to put us out there on display for America to see, for your cult to jump in and sit there and say, that's our president, to sit there and try to bully them into trade, because I guarantee there's something in South Africa that you would love to have, because America doesn't do production anymore. Your tariffs have proven that. At the same time, you want to smear anybody you want to do deals with. You tried it with Ukraine, and now you're trying it with South Africa. All the while, you still want to there and be like, well, we're rescuing people. Yet the people at the border, because they're not white, they don't deserve the same protection. F-47 missed me with the bullshit. But speaking of bullshit, Ashley Babbitt, domestic terrorist that was shot for being a dumbass, well, her parents had sued for wrongful death and won a $5 million payout. Guess who's going to be doing that $5 million payout? You and me as citizens. And this is why I sit there and say, for a country that says we do not negotiate with terrorists, we just negotiate with terrorists and we're paying them for it.
Glad you're with us on this Monday. Well, the Trump administration is set to pay nearly $5 million to settle a lawsuit brought by the family of Ashley Babbitt. She's the rioter fatally shot by police during the January 6th attack on our Capitol. The lawsuit accused the Capitol police officer who shot her of negligence. The Justice Department cleared him of criminal wrongdoing. President Trump pardoned nearly all of the 1,500 people charged in connection with the January 6th attack.
So let's take something from this for a second, because I just want to throw this out there. Ashley Babbitt was one of the 1,500 plus domestic terrorists that decided to, on January 6th, decided to cause an insurrection. She rushed the door, Capitol Police shot her, she's dead. They tried to use her as a martyr. Oh, they shot her. No, they shot a terrorist. What Capitol Police did is shoot a terrorist. I don't feel bad about it. Her dumbass played dumbass games. She won dumbass prizes. Surprise! You won an all expense paid trip to the afterlife. Now her family suing for wrongful death. I don't see how. Matter of fact, I don't even understand the case, because she's a terrorist by all definitions. A terrorist that rushed Capitol police officers. Capitol police officers did what they were supposed to do. They are supposed to protect everybody inside. But what's so crazy about this is that not only did her family have the unmitigated gall and the audacity to sue for wrongful death, but because we're in the F-47 administration, they won. So $5 million, which I love that it said the Trump administration is going to pay $5 million. Let's ask one question. The Trump administration is part of the government, which means, therefore, the Trump administration will not be paying $5 million. That will come out of the taxpayers, you and me. So yes, we are now paying for a domestic terrorist's loved ones left behind to be paid $5 million. Not to mention the fact of the Capitol police officers that were injured, that I don't see them getting any settlements or payouts. I don't see other besides Capitol police, other staff that were also hurt, damages in that nature. I don't see those folks getting compensated. Why is it that only one white domestic terrorist who was shot justifiably, that her family now gets a payout while Capitol Police and everybody else is left literally and figuratively in the cold? But oh, it's F-47's administration. He's already pardoned most of all the January 6th domestic terrorists. And Pam Bondi is his life. And again, Pam Bondi, another lapdog for F-47, who in the proper position of Attorney General, who literally runs the Department of Justice, who easily helped them win that case. You can sit there and tell me that's not all coincidental, but let's be honest. It is bull to pay a domestic terrorist and try to paint her as a patriot. That's all I'm saying. But speaking of F-47, who turned around and told you that tariffs will be paid by countries, tariffs will be paid by foreign countries, which was a lie. Tariffs can be paid by us because businesses are not going to eat the cost. F-47 has now decided to pick a fight with Walmart, saying that, you know what, you guys should pay for the tariffs. Not realizing the difference between a dictator and a president, well, Walmart had some words.
Tonight, the White House trying to tamp down fears of rising prices because of President Trump's tariffs.
I was on the phone with Doug McMillon, the CEO of Walmart, yesterday.
On Meet the Press, the Treasury Secretary detailing his talks with one of the country's largest retailers about its warning that some prices will go up.
And Walmart is, in fact, going to, as you describe it, eat some of the tariffs. This is all from their earnings call. And on an earnings call, you have to give the worst case scenario.
That coming after President Trump lashed out online, saying Walmart should stop trying to blame tariffs as the reason for raising prices, adding between Walmart and China, they should eat the tariffs. Walmart told investors it will try to absorb some costs of the trade wars, but that shoppers still could have to pay more for things like bananas, avocados, toys, and electronics. On Thursday, the company's chief financial officer explaining.
We're wired to keep prices low for customers, but the level of tariffs that have been proposed is pretty challenging for all retailers, for suppliers.
It's a war on consumers.
Amid the economic uncertainty, Philip Dampier in New York is stockpiling boxes of items for the next 2 years, like a new computer, new furniture, and even medication.
It was an all-out panic buying spree for the last 2 months. My husband's not very happy because the house is a disaster because of all the packages.
As a consumer, what would you say to President Trump if you could talk to him?
I'm facing a tight budget. Please lower prices, take the tariffs off.
Yamiche Alcindor joins us now from the White House. And Yamiche, this is all happening as there's a rare late night meeting tonight on the president's big budget bill.
That's right. The House Budget Committee is planning to reconvene tonight to try to salvage a multi-million-dollar bill focused on President Trump's agenda after a group of hardline Republicans pushing for steeper spending cuts blocked the budget deal.
So again, I just love the fact that F-47 is now trying to tell Walmart, you guys should eat the tariffs, because that's not the reason why costs are going up. While actually that's the reason why costs are going up. Because again, F-47 doesn't believe that he's done nothing wrong. And that part should worry people. He thinks his tariffs are actually working. They're not. Prices are going up everywhere. People are wanting to pay more. And I keep on pointing this out for all those that voted for F-47. You decided to do the FA part. We're now in the FO part because of you. At the same time, the tariffs have done nothing more than basically make us poor. Really and truly, as you see, most companies and most people have bulked up or bought in advance because when these tariffs hit, prices will go up on everything. The cost of living will go up, but your income will not. And at the same time, the big, beautiful bill they're talking about, the one that cuts Medicare, which they say they're not, but let's be honest, they are, is having problems getting passed through. Why? Because, well, you would think Republicans would just always be on the same line when it comes to stuff. But when you cut Medicare, you are cutting your voters. And the midterms are next year. So in order for them to keep the House and the Senate and their chokehold on government right now, is the reason why Republicans are, pretty much telling F-47 no.
Bring at the latest now in President Trump's budget bill, with Republicans still divided on the mix of tax cuts and spending cuts. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce has the latest. Good morning, Mary.
George, good morning. Well, after a marathon session that lasted throughout the night, House Republicans have finally advanced the president's bill. It does now head to the House floor for a full vote. That could happen as soon as today, but this fight is far from over. The president this morning trying to convince those Republican holdouts to fall in line. Overnight on Capitol Hill, a marathon effort to advance the president's economic agenda.
This is an historic moment. We believe it's a generational opportunity to reclaim the American promise, to renew the American spirit and restore America's greatness.
If Republicans are so proud of what is in this bill, then why are you trying to ram it through in the dead of night?
The package of tax cuts and immigration spending, now officially called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, still far from a done deal. The president facing holdouts in his own party.
I think we're going to get everything we want, and I think we're going to have a great victory.
On the Hill yesterday, Trump personally pressuring Republicans to get behind the bill, which would extend the 2017 Trump tax cuts, lift the federal income tax on tips and overtime work, provide $50 billion to resume construction of Trump's border wall, and slash federal spending by more than $1.5 trillion, including cuts to Medicaid, which would leave an estimated 8 million Americans without health insurance over a decade. But for several hardline Republicans, it doesn't go far enough. They're demanding even steeper cuts. Behind closed doors, sources tell us the president warned Republicans, don't expletive with Medicaid. Trump telling Republicans to get on board or risk a primary challenge, warning that anyone who won't fall in line, quote, wouldn't be a Republican much longer.
Anybody that didn't support it as a Republican, I would consider to be a fool.
But several Republicans still not sold.
Where are you on this bill?
I'm leaning maybe. I liked what he said about the Medicaid.
Did the president change your vote, sir?
He did a great job.
Did he change your vote?
He did a great job.
Now, with a narrow margin in the House, Speaker Johnson can only afford to lose 3 votes. And even if he does ultimately get this through the House, the bill still faces a real uphill battle over in the Senate, where the legislation is expected to face major changes. The bottom line here, George, this morning, there is still a long road ahead.
There is. And yesterday, Mary, the president also announced his intention to pursue a missile defense system.
We'll get to that momentarily. But again, I love how they put the fact, well, what happened with the meeting with F-47? He did a great job. So what did he say? He did a great job, which means that you didn't get what you wanted, because I have been saying this since the inception of this podcast, since the genesis of it all, when Paul Ryan couldn't wait to get his hands on Medicare and Medicaid. Paul Ryan, before Mike Johnson, there was Paul Ryan. And Paul Ryan, for all those that may or may not remember, he wanted to go after Medicare and Medicaid so bad, along with him and Rick Scott, because there's money in that. There's money in Medicare and Medicaid. But here's what some Republicans do see. They see the fact that they see potential voters. And if the bill does go through, which I love how they say, we're not touching Medicare and Medicaid. Yes, you are. You are cutting it to the point to where the bill would actually knock off anywhere from 10 to 15 million Americans off of it. 10 to 15 million Americans. That is 10 to 15 million votes, probable votes. And Republicans, as I said before, Trump may be secure until the next presidential election. Those people that are in the House and the Senate are not. And even more so, they're all saying the same thing. We do not want you to touch. And it's funny that F-47 is the one saying, don't F with Medicaid or Medicare. And what are they doing? We got the majority. Why not? And some Republicans are sitting there going, wait a minute. We shouldn't touch this. If we want to stay in office, we shouldn't touch this. Whereas if I'm the Democrats right now, I'll be sitting there running ads. Republicans want to go after Medicare and Medicaid and watch them try to defend it, because this big, beautiful bill is nothing more than cuts for the middle and lower class and tax breaks for the wealthy. I keep saying it, and yet it seems to be true. But at the same time, yeah, Mike Johnson's going to have a little bit of a problem, because Republicans are not thinking about the fact of people on Medicare and Medicaid. What they're thinking about the fact is, if I vote for this bill and I'm found out that I voted for this bill, then that could be the end of my political career as a representative or a senator. That's all these Republicans are thinking about that are so-called hardline. They're trying to think about the fact of how do I stay in this seat with all the perks that come with it. But if I push this bill forward, then my constituents may vote me out. That's all that it is. Whereas from the Democrats, I was simply sitting there saying, Republicans do not care about you. If you're on Medicare or Medicaid, they're trying to say that the fraud, waste, and abuse spending comes from the same individuals that depend on it, if not rely on it. But again, we'll come see, because why else would you have a meeting at 1 a.m. over a bill if this bill wasn't there to help Americans? You do it while America sleeps. Very effing sneaky, by the way. But I did want to get to this Golden Dome thing because, again, F-47 likes things gold. And obviously, because the Golden Dome is supposed to be a replica of what Israel has as far as their missile defense system. Here's the thing, and I'll get to it very shortly, but here's F-47 talking about it.
Promised the American people that I would build a cutting-edge missile defense shield to protect our homeland from the threat of foreign missile attack. And that's what we're doing today. I'm pleased to announce that we have officially selected an architecture for this state-of-the-art system that will deploy next-generation technologies across the land, sea, and space, including space-based sensors and interceptors. And Canada has called us, and they want to be a part of it. So we'll be talking to them. They want to have protection also. So as usual, we help Canada do the best we can. This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years. Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles, even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they're launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. As you know, we helped Israel with theirs, and it was very successful. And now we have technology that's even far advanced from that, but including hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles, and advanced cruise missiles. All of them will be knocked out of the air. We will truly be completing the job that President Reagan started 40 years ago, forever ending the missile threat to the American homeland. And the success rate is very close to 100%, which is incredible when you think of it. You're shooting bullets out of the air. I'm also pleased to report that the One Big Beautiful Bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this one.
So think about that. That's also included in that big, beautiful bill, that he wants to do a Golden Dome defense system for America. Slight problems, because America already has multiple defense systems. We don't need a Golden Dome system. At the same time, $175 billion price tag, on top of the fact that you're wanting to cut Medicare and Medicaid, on top of the fact that you want to cut more from the middle and lower classes, but you want to build a missile defense system that is unnecessary. Again, it is amazing that all this is being done. Like I said, the whole discussion around this is that they're framing that Medicare and Medicaid will not be touched. And again, I'll get to that momentarily because they want to cut it. But at the same time, your whole thing about wasteful spending, he wants to throw $175 billion with a B at a defense system that we do not need. While Secretary of Defense, never seldom sober, Pete Hegseth, is sitting there urging him on. If I'm the Democrats, why are they not? I'm like, again, if I'm the Democrats, I would be talking about this from the rafters every chance I get, because people should be informed that, hey, the bill they want to push through is not going to help American citizens. It is going to plunge us deeper in debt with a system we didn't ask for, with cuts, with the Trump tax cuts still engaged, with more cuts coming along the way, that unless you're rich or you're a corporation, it's Christmas for you. But for everyone else, it's a freaking nightmare. If I'm the Democrats, I should be shouting that from the rooftops right now. But speaking of things that be shouted from the rooftops, Representative Tim Moore was asked about Medicare and the fact that it was going to be cut from this big, beautiful bill. And well, just let's do his answer.
President Trump's trip to the Hill was not just a rally cry, but a straight up threat. Because while he was addressing reporters, he declared the GOP was a very unified party, while in his second breath saying that any Republican who doesn't back his budget plan would be knocked out so fast. Clearly, the president is turning up the pressure on members to fall in line as his party's dueling factions are also making their own threats to blow up this so-called big, beautiful bill, leaving the ugly ashes in its wake. Trump pushing back on reporters that he's losing patience with, especially those Republican holdouts.
Who's told you that?
We heard from people inside the room.
Oh, really? It's totally true. I never used the term. I didn't say losing. I didn't even talk about it. In fact, it's the opposite. I think we're going to get it done. I'm not losing patience. We're ahead of schedule. Anybody that told you that is a liar. I said waste, fraud, and abuse for Medicaid. If you find waste or fraud or abuse, we want to strengthen Medicaid. We want to strengthen Medicare. Waste, fraud, and abuse.
North Carolina Congressman Tim Moore, Republican member of the Budget Committee who supports the bill, joins me now. Congressman, good to see you. Clearly, the president isn't going to knock you out, but what about the millions of people who will get knocked off of Medicaid? It's what everybody's talking about.
Well, Kara, it's great to be with you. Look, the president said exactly the way it is. This is to get rid of the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. We should not be giving Medicaid to illegal immigrants. Folks who are able-bodied should have work requirements in place. And we need to make sure that we take care of our most medically fragile folks. We need to take care, for example, of single parents who have young children at home that they need to take care of. And we need to do that to shore up the system, to take care of those who truly need it. But we should never, ever allow Medicaid or any other program for that matter to be used by folks who are abusing it, folks who are illegally here, or folks who are able-bodied. So the president's spot on. What we're looking at doing is getting rid of the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. And the speaker has clearly spelled this out as well. So, and I think we're going to get there.
As Speaker of the North Carolina House, you helped expand Medicaid in your state. And you know, if this bill passes, it requires the committee that oversees Medicaid to cut $880 billion. And that's just not mathematically possible without Medicaid cuts. And that's right there on Congress's own budget office, in addition to the 10.3 million people who will lose coverage, which it states very clearly there on the website as well.
Well, what I'll say is, if you can look at the folks that would quote lose coverage, it's folks who are able-bodied. It's folks who are in the country illegally. It's folks who are who are able-bodied and refusing to work. Look, in North Carolina, when we did expansion, we wanted to put in work requirements. We wanted to say, that not make this some lifetime thing for someone who's able-bodied, allow somebody to get help on it. We wanted to put that in, but guess what? Under the Biden administration, we couldn't do that. And what's happened is the costs have just grown out of control. And what's happened is the services that are provided, the quality of care has dropped. We need to have cost certainty. We need to make sure we take care of that medically fragile population. And one of the key ways you do it is folks that shouldn't be getting it, you make sure you take those folks off the rolls. So that's what this bill would do. And that's where the cost cuts are. But there's like so much waste out there. I mean, folks know this when they talk about what's happening with federal budgets. I mean, look at what DOGE identified with just wasteful billions of dollars getting sent across the globe for who knows what. Trying to rein that in, because at the end of the day, this is the people's money, and we see this national debt that is a big issue. I mean, Moody's just downgraded the solvency of the country because of this, because of runaway spending, and it's a national debt that our children and our grandchildren are going to have to pay. And we have to be serious about this. And guess what else we have to do? We have to extend the Trump tax cuts, because that's going to be the thing to keep moving us forward. Energy independence, resuming the drilling of oil, getting it moving through the pipelines, making us an energy exporter. You do those things, you help in your GDP. I mean, this bill is well thought out. There may be some tweaks that are made in the final hours.
Let me follow up. Let me follow up on two things. Okay, I'm going to get to Moody's in just a second, but work requirements. Why why not put the work requirements into effect now? Because they wouldn't go into effect until 2029.
I think they ought to be in effect sooner than 2029. But there is going to need to be some time for once it's put in place to allow the states to be able to implement it, because they're going to have to go back on those folks, and the ones that fit in that criteria, make sure that they, first of all, get notice that they have work requirements, and then come through the process of how to implement it. So it's the kind of thing you can't just turn on a dime. So they need to have some time to get that done. So that's probably the biggest reason. But I do believe that waiting to 2029, that we ought to probably do it a little sooner than that if we possibly can.
Noted. All right. So for the third time in American history, the U.S. credit rating has been downgraded. You just mentioned this. Moody's lowering that rating because of the rising national debt. So something it says will only get worse if this bill passes and those 2017 tax cuts become permanent. You mentioned the tax cuts as well. Trump ran on cutting spending and reducing our debt. Aren't you worried if this bill passes, it could just balloon the debt and lead to even more economic instability?
Actually, no, with this passing, it actually finally slows that down. It's going to be the first time that anyone around here is actually taken seriously about trying to deal with the national debt. And so what it will do is it will reduce the rate of growth right now. If we don't do this, Gary, it just keeps going up incrementally. What will also happen when we pass this bill, because remember, this is not a static environment, is that the GDP should increase. We've seen clearly that when you cut these kinds of taxes, when you make targeted tax cuts like the TCJA, you inspire more economic activity. I mean, probably if I had to pick one of those things, probably the energy independence. I mean, the fact that we would start getting revenue from energy, from exploration, from exporting it, whereas we are spending billions of dollars every year buying oil, buying energy, frankly, from a lot of countries that don't like us. And so that is going to go a long way to actually fixing that, because the GDP will start going up. That'll ease the pressure. Then you can see more funds get put in to paying the debt. And remember, this is just for 1 year right now, right? I want to see us next year build on that. Really lean in with those DOGE cuts where they found all this waste, and really try to keep trimming the fat. Get services to people who need them, but get rid of the waste that's out there.
There are critics out there, though, and that are putting estimates as much as $3.3 trillion could be added to the national debt. Would you vote for this bill if it actually adds to the national debt?
So if I did not see this bill being something that long term is going to work to get rid of the national debt, no, I wouldn't vote for it. But this bill does that. But it's a process. Look, we didn't get into this mess overnight. The last 4 years were really bad under Joe Biden. But frankly, this has been a problem that has been in the development for decades. And this Congress is taking it seriously to finally get a handle on it. But guess what? We can't fix 30 years, if you want to say that, 30 years of runaway spending in one cycle. But it's a commitment to move forward. And I got to tip my hat to Speaker Johnson, to Chairman Arrington on the Budget Committee for really the work that they've done to help make this a central issue. That seems to be one thing that our entire conference is united on. The president's united on it. The question is sometimes how you get there. And, I practiced law before I came here. And so folks talk about, this side's not happy of the conference and this side's not happy. Sometimes when you have a good deal when some of the sides are equally unhappy, right? I mean, that's where we are. But this is, in my opinion, it's a great thing. You mentioned North Carolina. Look, I've had some experience back when I was in the legislature where we turned around a state that was upside down. We had the federal government $4 billion, unemployment out, through the roof, going in all the wrong directions. Fast forward to now, we have a budget surplus. We're one of the fastest growing states in the country, and we did it through fiscal discipline, reducing taxes, reducing spending and controlling spending, and reducing regulations. Those are the kinds of things that we're seeing here finally happen at the federal level. And guess what? It'll produce the same good results.
Stay tuned. Congressman Tim Moore, appreciate your time.
Okay, so Congressman Tim Moore's pretty much full of shit, but let's go ahead and talk about what he said. Number one, anybody that sits there and says that the Doge cuts actually found something needs to be examined thoroughly. Doge did not find a doggone thing. They did not find wasteful spending. Anything they did find, once it was fact-checked, was immediately taken down. That's number one. Number two, the fact that he's sitting there saying these cuts should produce economic growth. You tried that with 2017 Trump's tax cuts. What happened? You added nearly $3 trillion to the debt. You almost put us damn near into a recession, At the same time, consumer spending took a hit. Everything took a hit, except the rich and the corporations, which, by the way, sat there and recorded record profits and buyouts and things of that nature. Everybody else, not so much. It's amazing how he there and says, well, we want to do work requirements for those on Medicare and Medicaid. For anybody that's on Medicare or Medicaid, there are various different situations why you were granted for it. A lot of them being that you may or may not have been able to work. And this is the conservatives' way of thinking. Because again, they did the same thing with welfare. That their whole thing, welfare, was everybody should be on welfare. Well, let's do work requirements for welfare. You had to search for a job, especially if you're in a conservative or a red state. They actually do more. They actually included more things. You had to be constantly searching for a job. You had to be reporting your hours, things of that nature. Instead of wondering, well, what can we do to fix the job markets here in Tennessee, especially in Tennessee, because Tennessee's one of them. But I'm using my state for an example. Instead of them sitting there saying, how come we just don't give these folks who don't have jobs, state jobs in many areas to where they can be employed? We can help them get back on their feet and therefore would fulfill the work requirement. No, that'd be too easy. But let's go ahead and make it harder to get welfare. Why? Because a lot of people believe that a lot of people shouldn't be on welfare. Hence, Medicare and Medicaid. You have Republicans who have government-funded health care for as long as they live, who will get a nice sized income for as long as they are. Because whether you're a senator or a representative, that money that you get every year, you get that for the rest of your days, even after you left office. So on top of the fact that you get free health care for life, on top of the fact you have a nice little income that you get post your political career, these are the same people who are going to be talking about wasteful spending. Wasteful spending is what they're trying to do now. And like I said, I love how he says, well, North Carolina did the same thing and we have a surplus. Yes, you do. But your plan and budget cuts are not the reason why you have that surplus. The only reason why you have it, well, let's also be honest, you've embraced other forms of revenue. I'm just going to throw that out there. At the same time, you guys have taxed your citizens to death. That is the only reason why he's able to sit there and say, oh, well, North Carolina, we have a surplus right now. Yes, because you tax your constituents to death. And at the same time, they're conservatives. So what happens? They vote to shoot themselves in the foot and reload. But again, his whole thing about work requirements, because let me tell you something, only conservatives are asking for work requirements on welfare, Medicare, and Medicaid. Only conservatives are asking for are pushing back the retirement age for Social Security. Only Republicans, just to give you guys history, Democrats have never pushed back the age for Social Security requirements. That's Republicans, because they want to keep kicking the can down the road. At the same time, guys, I just love the fact that they're trying to say, well, the bill won't cut Medicaid. Yes, it will. And I'll even give you another example, because former Canadian, pretending to be Cuban, somehow American, Senator Ted Cruz, as you can see here talking momentarily, will again dodge the question.
The president is there on Capitol Hill. He's attending the House GOP conference this morning, of course, pushing his, quote, big, beautiful bill. Right now, the proposal would cut taxes and spending, which includes hundreds of billions in cuts to Medicaid. Your colleague from Missouri, Republican Senator Josh Hawley, is a vocal critic of the Medicaid changes. He says, and you probably know this already, but just a refresher, he says if funding is cut, workers and their children will lose health care and hospitals will close. He also warned that deep Medicaid cuts were both morally wrong and politically suicidal. So do you agree with him? What are your thoughts on his comments?
Well, it is not accurate that this bill cuts Medicaid. What it does is it imposes a work requirement for Medicaid for young, healthy adults. One of the worst things President Obama did in Obamacare is he expanded Medicaid, which was designed for the truly needy, was designed for people with disabilities, for kids who have real needs, and it was expanded to young, healthy adults, many of whom sadly are receiving Medicaid and not working. And this puts a work requirement in, which frankly helps them, is good for them. If you look back in the 1990s, when Bill Clinton was president, you had a Republican House, we passed welfare reform that required, in order to receive welfare, work requirements, and millions of people went back to work. That ended up transforming their lives. And so I don't agree with your premise that putting a work requirement on Medicaid, saying if you're a young, healthy adult, that you need to be working. I think that is positive policy, and I think it will end up helping millions of people.
Okay, this bill would also extend the 2017 Trump tax cuts and also include new provisions, right? Like no taxes on tips. You've spent more than a decade pushing for Congress to control the deficit. Are there enough spending cuts in this bill to make up for the tax cuts?
Yeah, so there are not enough spending cuts. We need to do more to rein in spending. But let's be clear. The tax cuts do not increase the deficit. If you go back to 2017, and I spent hundreds of hours working with President Trump, working in the Senate in 2017 to pass the first tax cuts, we cut taxes by trillions of dollars. And you know what happened the next year? Federal tax revenue went up. It didn't go down, it went up because it produced millions of jobs, because it helped families, because it helped small businesses. And so in this case, the Democrats want to raise taxes by trillions of dollars, which would hurt small businesses, which would kill jobs, which would hurt working families. I think the way to generate more tax revenue is get the economy roaring. We're going to do that. But look, I'll say there's some spending cuts in this bill. We need more. And I'm hopeful. If you look back at 2017, the House passed a good bill. It went to the Senate and it got stronger. And then we went to conference committee and it got even better. I think we're going to do the same thing. And so I want to keep pressing to have as much fiscal responsibility as possible, because there's no doubt our debt is out of control. But we don't have a taxing problem. We got a spending problem. We got to rein in that spending problem.
All right, Senator Cruz, I want to shift to other news.
So what's crazy about this is that, again, they love hitting on certain things. We're not cutting Medicare. We're not cutting folks from Medicare and Medicaid. We are just saying that they're able, young body Americans that could be working that don't need it. So you're cutting people from Medicare and Medicaid. Well, no, we're trying to identify wasteful spending. Do y'all guys just share a group memo on how to speak and not make any sense? Or is it just in the F47 Cult Weekly that goes out? Because they say it all the time. It never ceases to amaze me that they try to sit there and say, well, we're just trying to cut down wasteful spending. Okay. And we're trying to cut down, the excessive spending. You guys are in control now. This whole thing of, well, it was wasteful spending from the previous administrations who are no longer in power because you're running the show. It never ceases to amaze me how they always blame the previous administration. You guys have overwhelming majority. You guys could literally push through a bill in record timing from the House to the Senate in hours, because you did that. You did that with the Take It Down Act, a bill that was basically set out to crack down on revenge porn. Albeit it might be great in some ways, but revenge porn is like 4% of crimes. And it's still harder to enforce. But at the same time, you got it through. Even just now, the no taxes on tips that got passed to the House and the Senate. Both sides actually wanted it, and it got through. Still waiting to be signed on F47's desk. Maybe the one positive this actual idiot could have during this presidential run is he can sit there and say, well, I got no taxes. I got taxes taken away off tips. As if he signs it. But it amazes me when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid, how they're being very careful not to sit there and say, yes, we are going to be cutting people from it because they're their voters. But leave it to Cuban Ted Cruz to turn around and say, well, during the Clinton administration, we got people off welfare by putting them back to work. And guess what happened? They went back to work. The problem is you knocked 15 million Americans off welfare. And of course, the red states, like I talked about, guys, when the work requirements for welfare got put into place, Confederate, well, let's be honest, conservative, Confederate, red states implied more than just work requirements. So of course you can stand and say people had to go back to work because again, they had to survive. But instead of actually helping them, you actually started to kick them off of it and said, good luck. And also, I love how you sit there and talk about the corporate tax rate. The corporate tax rate during the Clinton presidency was 53%. And at that time, a lot of tax breaks were given to the middle and lower class. Even some small businesses for progressive growth were actually given tax breaks. So that's why you can sit there and say during Clinton's era that, yeah, you guys may have actually thrived, but it wasn't you guys. Even more so to where it is like, how in the blue hell can they think it's a great idea? Because again, it is a Republican wet dream, folks, that they want to go after Medicare and Medicaid so bad that they are willing to play with people's lives to do so. But they can't tell you that, because if they did tell you that, then guess what would happen? You wouldn't vote for them come the midterms. And trust me, they will be going hard next year. Mark my words. But a couple more stories, guys, before we get to this. I did want to point out one thing, because again, if you are in the middle of severe weather, hopefully you are safe and your family is safe and that and the other. But again, there are certain states, because again, remember, Trump decided to basically overhaul FEMA. And we now know that tornadoes have hit certain states, including my home state of Tennessee. Mississippi was hit for it, and now they're requesting federal aid. Keep in mind, when it comes to FEMA, they wanted to cut FEMA because they did not see the reason for federal aid until those very same states whose senators and representatives basically kissed Trump's ass are now awaiting assistance. I just want to point one thing out. And I do mean I want to point one thing out, because every one of these states that were, all gung-ho and saying, yeah, that's probably right, we didn't need FEMA anyway. I just showed Mississippi, who had multiple tornado strike touchdowns in their state. And just as a simple reminder, they voted for F-47 nearly almost 61%. It is amazing to me that all these states and cities that have disaster relief are looking toward the federal government for help. At the same time, it's the very same person they put in office, along with his administration, that's cutting the very federal assistance that they could use right now. Mississippi, you effed around and you found out. But moving right along, guys, before we do get to the end of this, I did also want to point out that, again, when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, right, which I won't say all white people, conservatives and very strange napkins are trying their hardest to get rid of. Now a Chicago mayor is being put, and I wish I could make this up. A mayor in Chicago is now being investigated by idiot Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice for simply having a diverse staff. Yes, that is all that it is.
Two administrations ago, 70 to 75% of the administration is primarily made up of white and white men. In my administration, 45% of my administration is Black, 25% is Latina, 30% is white, 8% is Asian. It is the most diverse administration in the history of Chicago. And here's why I'm naming this, is because there are some detractors that will push back on me and say, the only thing that the mayor talks about is the hiring of Black people. No, what I'm saying is when you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else.
That says a lot, doesn't it? That literally you're only being investigated for having a diverse staff. And now we're looking into his hiring practices. Again, that's F-47's lapdog, Pam Bondi. You basically weaponized DOJ, the same thing that F-47 talks about that they shouldn't have is now at his disposal. And for what? There is nothing wrong. Let me tell you something right now, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing wrong with DEI. With diversity, equity, inclusion, that just ensures that everybody has a fair shot. When you don't have DEI, you have white privilege. And white privilege will always see themselves as being oppressed. But they'll also see themselves as oppressed when they're not included, or they feel like they're not included, especially in areas that don't concern them. Don't believe me? Think about that. A black mayor with a diverse staff is being investigated by the DOJ for hiring practices. Why? Because you guys don't remember a long time ago, I'm not even saying that long time, I'll say 4 or 5 months, we covered a story where a woman sat there and says that she was basically, a white woman says that she was being discriminated against because her boss, who was trans, was hiring trans people, and she believed she was more qualified than said trans person. So she literally sat there and said, I'm being discriminated against. No different than white people now. I'm not saying all white people, but the white people who feel some way, that just means that your privilege is in question because you're not included. And honestly, you don't need to be included. Because again, with diversity, equity, inclusion, just like most folks who are hiring, they are hiring for the best staff. They can say that honestly. There are some white folks out there that can't. And they should be honest with themselves. Just saying. Also, qualified immunity. Qualified immunity. You guys heard us talk about this, the George Floyd murder, along with the fact that they did try to put it in the George Floyd Police Reform Bill that qualified immunity should be removed along with no-knock warrants. Well, unfortunately, that is becoming a relic of the past.
Right now in Ohio, advocates are gathering signatures to end qualified immunity. That protects police officers from civil lawsuits, even when they violate the Constitution. Those advocates are hoping that Ohio will vote to become the 4th state to limit those protections, which critics say make it hard to hold accountable officials. The effort to stop qualified immunity has been years in the making, ignited into a national firestorm in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd at the hands of police. NBC's Lawrence Hurley joins us with his reporting on this story. MSNBC legal analyst Paul Butler is here as well, a former prosecutor and a professor at Georgetown Law. Lawrence, you've been reporting on this topic for years now. What can you tell us about the current status of qualified immunity nationwide?
Yeah, so just to set the table, back in 2020, after the George Floyd killing, there was a lot of discussion in Washington about making major reforms. There were cases pending at the Supreme Court. There were bills in Congress. The House passed a bill. The Supreme Court spent weeks considering whether to take up cases, but none of that ended up happening, right? So at the national level, very little has happened. The reform effort has kind of fizzled, really, at the national level. But there are some signs of incremental reform that have been taking place in states, as you mentioned earlier, and also in the courts. So some lower court judges have been pretty critical of qualified immunity, this doctrine that was invented by the Supreme Court. And we've seen some cases, including one just recently, where an appeals court ruled that Oakland police officers wouldn't get qualified immunity because of their role in a high-speed car chase. And so you continue to see some of those cases coming up, and it shows how the reform efforts really are coming from the bottom up rather than the top down.
So what's crazy about this is, y'all, is that the fact of the matter is that qualified immunity, and I've been saying this for the longest time, it does not. I mean, police don't need it. Law enforcement, if you're doing your job, you don't need qualified immunity. It basically just means that you're blocked from being prosecuted or sued. Now, here's my thing. If firefighters, paramedics, doctors all have malpractice insurance, why? In the event that they are sued. Doctors have it all the time. They have malpractice insurance in case they are sued. So at the same time, pilots also have it. So you're telling me pilots, doctors, paramedics all have this type of insurance to protect themselves from lawsuits, but yet law enforcement doesn't have it because they need qualified immunity. Qualified immunity just gives them a blind, can actually allow them to do whatever they want. I mean, I've said before, officers can wait till 40 hours to give their statement. They can review evidence before they give their statement. They can speak with others before they give their said statement. They have all this area to be able to give a statement while doing all these things, whereas the person that's arrested must give all this information immediately. At the same time, we're already seeing that there's some areas where qualified immunity or the ability to have that removed is being dropped because of, well, who's in charge of the Department of Justice. Again, guys, you can sit there and say otherwise, and I'll say it before, police reform is needed. Does that mean that, again, like, well, there's some good police out there, Will? I'm sure there is. But they're being overshadowed by a lot of folks who should not have a badge, who should not protect and serve. And as we're seeing in the most recent cases, getting actually cleared of shootings and killings that they should not have done. So miss me with the fact that qualified immunity is not needed. It does need to be removed, and I'm glad that some states are pushing forward. At the same time, police reform is heavily, heavily needed. But last story that we got, guys, again, this is why I know that F-47 doesn't like people talking about him. And, for always talking about calling people snowflakes and not tough and not all this, he literally has baby soft ass skin when it comes to when anybody say anything about him. Even more so, former FBI Director James Comey simply said 4 letters, and apparently it involved the Secret Service.
Former FBI Director James Comey facing an investigation tonight after he posted a now deleted photo that Trump allies say calls for the president's assassination. Gabe Gutierrez is at the White House, and Gabe, the Secret Service is now involved.
Yes, Lester, a law enforcement official confirms James Comey will be interviewed by the Secret Service in person tonight. The agency says it takes rhetoric like this very seriously. While President Trump said today the former FBI director was calling for his assassination and knew it. This is the image Comey shared on social media, what he described as a shell formation on a beach that formed the numbers 8647. Trump allies saying 86 meant not just getting rid of, but assassinating the 47th president. Comey, of course, was fired during Trump's first term and became an outspoken Trump critic. Comey explains he thought it was a political message, not a violent one, adding, quote, "I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down."
Again, it was a she-shell. Let's see if I can go back to it. Hang on a second. Shoot. Well, there it is. So again, a seashell picture of 8647. Now, and they're trying to stand and say, well, this is dangerous speech against the president. Really? I thought the person that actually missed him by the ear was more of a threat. Although, again, we don't condone violence of any kind against the presidential administration, no matter who's in office. I'm just saying whoever was in 200 yards of him was a pretty bad shot. That being said, James Comey says 8647, and you have those out there that are screaming for his head, talking about he's wanting the president to be killed. Meanwhile, back in January 6th, we had this. Guys, remember January 6th, where they wanted to hang Mike Pence, literally had a galley with a hangman's noose, as you have give us liberty, give us death, with MAGA signs and hats and things of that nature. And again, it is amazing that these are the same people who are calling for the fact that Comey needs to be arrested. And yet, just not too long ago, 2 years ago, we are now back to this. So again, it amazes me so, the level of just flat out hypocrisy. Now again, I got no qualms against Comey. I don't. At the same time, the man, like I said, he can say that he's a private citizen now. He can say what he wants to say about Trump. But at the same time, 8647, this man got insulted by numbers. 86 honestly could mean a lot of things. It does not necessarily mean killing or murder. It doesn't. But at the same time, if it takes that much, that little bit to basically get under his skin, imagine what else is going to be said out there that he wants to control. Because, F-47 doesn't like anything he doesn't agree with. And if he disagrees with it, he'll call it fake news, say you're a dumbass reporter, say you work for, and he loves to rattle those three off, NBC, CBS, ABC News. He loves to rattle them off. Because in his mind, those three networks never have any, they report the news. Whereas State Propaganda Entertainment Center, Fox News, although not a real news station, loves to tout F-47. But God forbid, 4 letters got him in a tizzy. But last thing, but we'll go and move on to our feel-good segment, guys, because usually how the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes I do your faith, humanity, but hey, it's Wednesday. Tomorrow is Thursday. We will leave you guys out with some good vibrations, and hopefully this next story will do that, about how one random act of kindness actually led to a little bit of cash in a guy's pocket.
Alex, a quiet moment caught on camera, then shared around the world. An Amazon delivery driver does something small but powerful. And what happens next, he never saw coming. Tonight, it is the viral video, surprise reunion, and the $1,000 twist on Cash for Kindness, brought to you by our friends at Aaron Plumbing today.
Stephen Cash doesn't know it, but he's about to get a Cash for Kindness surprise.
Is that my man, Stephen? Oh, man, we got ourselves a celebrity.
How you doing, man? How you doing?
Good to see you, man. How are you?
Nice to meet
Good
you.
to
Nice
meet
to
you,
meet
man.
We asked to meet up with the Amazon delivery driver to see how life has changed since our viral Facebook post about him blew up.
Almost 80,000 likes, 3,500 shares, 1,000 comments, and all of them saying that you're probably the best Amazon driver in the world.
I try to be, man. I just was making my way over here during the route, and I saw the camera there, and I just decided to pick it up. I felt like it was, the right thing to do.
This is the Ring surveillance video that caught fire online.
The door thing came on.
It shows him picking up a fallen camera after making a delivery next door, then spending time to secure it back in place.
So I help you out.
Kate Rusfold, who owns the camera, bought it to feel safer. She was shocked to see a stranger go out of his way to help.
He spent the time. He spent multiple minutes just sitting there trying to make sure it wasn't going to fall again. He was pushing on it. It was multiple rounds of videos on my Ring camera.
Kate knew she had to find him.
I just wanted to give him a hug and say, "Oh my God, thank you. You're the reason why I haven't given up hope in this world yet. People like you. It's a big deal."
The next day, Steven started getting tagged in the video, and everything changed.
And I immediately saw the video of the Ring, and I was like, oh my gosh, why couldn't that have been a better shot? But I just kind of ran with it, and it was a good feeling to have. I mean, like with all the support that I was getting, it was awesome. It was awesome.
Did you ever get a chance to meet the person whose camera that you helped put up?
Unfortunately, I did not. I did not get to meet him. I didn't want to bother anybody. I wasn't too sure if anybody was home at the time, but I just wanted to get it done and get it out the way. But I haven't met her.
I know our viewers at home would love some sort of reunion. I don't know if that person. Do you want to try to knock? Do you want to see, guys? What do you think? Do you want to try to knock? All right, let's go. Come on.
Surprise!
Nice to meet you. May I give you a hug?
Yes, thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for putting me out there. I was telling him I didn't think much of it. I'm just glad I was able to help you out because, like I said, I know Ring is a source of security for a lot of people, so I'm just glad I could help you.
No, absolutely. I mean, I got home later that night and I seen it and I was like, it was such a big deal to me. I wanted to say thank you and give you a hug because chivalry is a huge deal to me. In the world we live in nowadays, safety and chivalry, there's not very many people that are just so kind, and especially being an Amazon driver. I mean, you're a busy man.
But the surprise wasn't over.
I have a program on Fox SA. It's called Cash for Kindness.
Oh.
And we reward people who do things without expecting anything in return, my friend. We think that he's a pretty darn good candidate for this. So behind this door is a friend of mine. You want to meet him?
Sure, let's do it.
One more surprise for you, man. You ready, Stephen?
Yes, sir.
Waiting behind the door is our friend and sponsor at Aaron Plumbing today.
What's going on, man? Nice to meet you.
Likewise. Man, we appreciate what you did, taking your time off.
Pick up the doorbell, thousands of comments, and everybody was right. 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, $1,000 cash.
Thank you so much, man. You have no idea how much this helps me.
A selfless act, an unforgettable delivery, and a son who gets to watch his father show how it pays to be kind.
Just glad that I was able to do something that just happened to, pay off for me, and now my son's going to see the benefits and just, thank the community.
What a fun story to tell. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things, right?
And yeah, like I said, random act of kindness. Random act of kindness, you never know where it goes. And again, there's nothing wrong with being kind because you never know who's watching and you actually never know what it might lead to. And let's that young man get $1,000 in his pocket. Who could use $1,000? Lord knows I could. But that being said, that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting you know this is live. I certainly appreciate it. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here, fellas and ladies, and those that want to be identified how they want to be identified. Shout out to Always Press Record TV. Why? Because our show, How the Frack We Got Here, does show on there, whether on the Roku or Amazon Fire TV. Definitely check out Always Press Record. Also, check out blurredstation.com, the place to be for content, for viewership, most importantly, where our dollars should be going to. For movies, television, anime, things of that nature, you can definitely find it there at Blurred Station. Again, if you do want to check us out, definitely go to blurredstation.com, select the Join Now button, select the Blurred's Eye View Offended membership, select my name, Black Spartan there. Again, it's $10.99 a month to stream Blurred Station on all smart devices. Definitely check it out. You will not be disappointed. Also, runforoffice.org. I keep telling you guys how Moms for Liberty did it, how the crazy people did it. They basically use sites like this and ran for office. And if you feel the call to serve, whether it's nationally or federally or statewise or locally, you can definitely do so there. Simply type in your address to run for office. It'll take you through the process of how you can get your name on the ballot to run and hopefully be able to serve. And trust me, we're going to need a lot more people, as you can see. If we do nothing, and I mean if we do nothing, F-47 version 3 is going to happen next. I am just saying. Again, but as far as the show, guys, How the Frack We Got Here, all together on the socials. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok. Like, share, and subscribe because, like PBS, we simply cannot do this without you. And I appreciate every like, every follow for letting people know that this show is going on and that people are joining and saying they're liking it. Again, I appreciate all of it. It makes what I do not just a job, but something I really love in my as far as to empower and to encourage others to get informed. If we're informed, I'm telling you, we could change so much. But also myself, Black_Spartan615. You can also follow me on YouTube as well. Just don't be weird. I don't want to start blocking people just because they can't hold a simple conversation. That's all I'm saying. But the last thing I'll say, guys, before we get out of here, guys, is don't doom scroll. I know right now the world itself is just the one big, massive hold my beer contest. But, guys, don't doom scroll. Don't stick to your phones. Do something that makes you happy. Do something that makes you gives you peace. Go outside. Get some air. Enjoy life. Check on your folks. A call or a text. Anything helps. At the same time, guys, protect your peace. Because, again, you have to remember to take care of you as well as you're taking care of others. But definitely take care of you because there's only one of you, and you are irreplaceable. Just saying. The last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel, guys. We're simply giving you all the information allowing you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past, making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Congress, and also maybe just one day electing our first Black woman to be the first Madam President. All great things. We don't learn from history. We are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up with our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack We Got Here. Definitely, guys, take care of yourselves and each other. And I promise